At Groton, Connecticut, the huge submarine base sees a new era launched in underseas craft. A crowd of more than 10,000 is assembled for the keel laying of the first atomic-powered submarine. As the keel plate is lowered, President Truman approaches the huge cradle in which the sub will be assembled. Many of its parts have been under construction for a year. The president inscribes his initials on the plate with chalk, dedicating the Nautilus in one of the revolutionary chapters of the atomic age. The initials are then burned into the hull by one of the shipyard workers. Completion is expected within 1 or 2 years. Estimated speed underwater is 25 knots, with almost unlimited range on a few pounds of uranium, a deadly weapon for war or peace. The final mop-up of rioting red prisoners begins in earnest as paratroops use tear gas, flamethrowers, and concussion grenades in the cleanup job. As illegal buildings and tents burn fiercely, they mark the finale of one of the toughest stockades on the island, containing the hardcore of the red rioters. The seasoned troops make short work of the rebels as they move in under the cover of tank guns after being given their orders by General Boatner. The really tough boys are hustled out with their hands up, but the caps on the ground belong to anti-communist prisoners in token of surrender. Hundreds of these had been slaughtered by Reds through kangaroo courts. Scores were wounded during the affray, and 1 American was killed. A costly skirmish, but one which will result in a new policy on Koji, with careful segregation of Reds and non-communists in smaller compounds. Reds in Korea may well have wondered at the pinpoint accuracy with which bombs were hitting their targets. Now, Department of Defense pictures reveal Tarzan, the guided missile being loaded into a B-29 for a test on an isolated bomb range in the United States. Released from an undisclosed altitude, Tarzan starts its long drop. Now, watch carefully how it is kept on target by a method kept secret by the military. It is brought back on target right here. See the change of direction? Unerringly, it is held to the sight line and at all times is under control from the plane. Here's the target and a bullseye. A surprise strike on the Long Island Railroad serving 300,000 commuters into New York leaves milling multitudes stranded and helplessly reading the morning headlines. Empty stations and tracks are the result of a walkout by engineers on the line in a dispute over working rules by 350 of their number. The tie-up brings a frantic rush to the buses, which are taxed to capacity, and motorists jam already overcrowded highways, crawling along bumper to bumper at a snail's pace. It is one of the worst traffic tie-ups in New York's history, as thousands seek to reach their jobs. While roads are clogged, stations are deserted. It's festival time in Portland, Oregon. The annual Rose Festival, this is number 44 and a real spectacle, reaches its zenith as the grand floral parade unwinds through the city. 250,000 persons, home folks and visitors alike, view the colorful festival parade. Its theme, childhood memories, carried out in millions of massed blossoms. From every vantage point, the onlookers get an eye-filling glimpse of a rose-studded salute to the young in heart. This circus float won the grand sweepstakes. Of course, no parade could be complete without pretty gals, and this year's Rose Parade is no exception. Roses are in bloom, and Portland says it with flowers. Before a crowd of 25,000, biggest ever to see a soccer game in this country, 2 of England's top teams demonstrate the fine art of Europe's top sport. On tour of Canada and the U.S., the Tottenham Hotspurs and the Manchester Uniteds continue their feud, which began when Manchester dethroned Tottenham as British champions earlier this year. Since then, however, the Hotspurs have been hot. They have not been beaten in 10 starts. The Manchester Booters in the white pants aren't in the same league at all here in Yankee Stadium, the home that Babe Ruth built. Soccer is to Englishmen what baseball is to us, and the Hotspurs are giving their old rivals a lesson in how soccer should be played. As they say back in England, good show. The battle of old rivals turns into a rout. The Hotspurs go on a spree to win 7-1. And as we say back here, tisk, tisk. 66 cowboys and 9 cowgals from 12 Western and Southwestern colleges vie for laurels in the Portland Rose Festival Rodeo. Oregon State College is host to the young riders who discover this is no cinch course. It may be part of Rose Festival doings, but a buck and bronc by any other name spells defeat for students seeking a degree in acrobatics, Wild West style. Flunking out here can be mighty rough, too. Study comes hard to many an undergrad today. Bulldogging is an extracurricular activity, no routine affair either, even when you take the bull by the horns. For their final exams, the collegians meet their stiffest test of all, the Brahma Bulls. If experience is the best teacher, then this little spin should give a college cowboy enough experience to last a lifetime.
An elephant, Palisades Park, the Hudson River, and history is made. Seems that some enterprising soul looked in the record books and found that no elephant has ever water skied up the Hudson River, or down either. A state of affairs that obviously had to be remedied. So they enlisted an amiable young lady elephant, womped up a properly jumbo-sized pair of water skis, got a pretty gal to keep our precocious taxiderm company on the ride, and proceeded to fill the gap in the history books. Of course, you realize little Miss Jumbo has water skied before, but never on the Hudson. That's just to keep the record straight.
America makes her bid for the Atlantic Blue Ribbon as the biggest and fastest liner built in the United States arrives in New York after a shakedown cruise from Newport News, Virginia. Nosing up the harbor, it receives the traditional marine ovation. The last word in radar equips the masts of the new Sea Queen. Past the Statue of Liberty, the 53,000-ton luxury ship slowly and majestically noses her way up the harbor as flags bedeck her 990-foot length. The huge proportions of the ship become apparent from the bridge, where an official welcome is extended by Mayor Impellitteri of New York to Commodore Harry Manning, who will command the vessel. The liner's speed has been kept a secret, but is known to exceed 32 knots. The vessel's maiden voyage to Europe will be made July 3rd. Meantime, New York's skyline greets America's shipbuilding triumph. She cost $73 million and represents the last word in luxury. And she also represents in her graceful lines Yankee shipbuilding know-how. In Miami, the incoming and outgoing imperial potentates of the Mystic Shrine preside over the festivities as some 13,000 nobles of the ancient Arabic order cavort down the Orange Pole's touchdown lane. Nearly 200,000 are enthusiastic spectators at the dazzling climax of the Order's 78th annual convention. Fantastic floats and splendiferous costumes add sparkle to the occasion and dazzle the eyes of the audience that really counts, the kids who benefit from the charities and good works of the shrine. But now business is out of the way and fun is the order of the day. These lucky kids don't complain, though it's well after midnight when they reach the finale. is 25 years since Will Rogers Memorial Hospital at Saranac, New York, was founded by the Variety Clubs of America to combat and treat tuberculosis. Over the years, doctors and laboratory scientists have worked unceasingly with the support of Variety Clubs to control and stamp out the disease. On the anniversary, members of the clubs gather to view the highly improved facilities of the institution. Variety Clubs work the year round to raise funds for this type of work. Jeannie Reed, a cured patient, presents Charles Feldman of Universal International, National Exhibitor Chairman, with a silver bowl. And later, leading members of Variety Clubs join in unveiling a statue of the great humorist. A great humanitarian's work is carried on by the country's showman. This is the starting gun of a modern miracle, a church in a day. At Santa Rosa, California, a Presbyterian church entirely built by its members gets off to a fast start, and almost the entire community takes part in the project. What looks like confusion is actually well-organized effort, under the direction of experts, and in short order, the roof goes into place. As the clock ticks on, workmen who have donated their services race against time, and the steeple goes on. With the clock ever in front of them, the building is closed, and from then on, the painters take over in the race. The pews are moved in, and an expectant congregation sees the new minister, the Reverend William Bowen, congratulated by Hugh Codding, donor of the building. Crowning touch comes as the first wedding couple leaves the new church. This was the modern miracle of Santa Rosa, and while the groom may not know it, the whole thing took place in 5.5 hours. The stars are out in Alaska. To Anchorage come Hollywood personalities for an Arctic premiere of The World in His Arms, Universal International's epic drama of pioneer days in our Northern Territory. Star of the picture, lovely Ann Blythe, arrives for Alaska's first film premiere. Kathleen Hughes and Palmer Lee are among those making the record-breaking junket to Alaska. Governor Gruning and General Old of the Alaskan Air Command greet Miss Blythe. She heads a star-studded cast, including Buddy Hackett and Gene Cooper, who are traveling 12,000 miles to entertain servicemen at our far-flung northern outposts. For Anchorage, a place of constant daylight, the premiere is a spotlight event. The whole town buzzes with excitement over the preview of the film about Alaska. The first screenings are held at the Elmendorf Air Force Base. Long before the show starts, the GIs are in line for seats. The luckiest among them have dates with visiting film stars, and with stars in their eyes, they're the envy of every other guy on the base. With Ann Blythe on his arm, here's an airman who's flying high. There are plenty of his pals who'd gladly swap places with him right now. World in His Arms has its civilian bow at the 4th Avenue Theater in downtown Anchorage. The biggest throng in the history of the territory, and that goes for any event, is on hand for the picture. Next stop for the visitors is famed and very scenic Manitousca Valley. And here the order of the day is food. A real Alaska-style barbecue finds plenty of takers. Always tastes better in your fingers, and a pretty queen gets royal attention. Alaska goes all out to entertain those who have brought a world of entertainment with a world in his arms. America speaks at the polling booths from coast to coast as 55 million from all walks of life cast their votes for the 33rd man to become president of the United States. From the farms and urban centers, they pile up the biggest vote in the nation's history. And Aroused America cuts across all party and factional lines to record its verdict. Here is the freest democracy in action. The aged and young bring the cross-section of the people to the expression of their will in an atmosphere of calm domestic purpose. Among the prominent voters is elder statesman Herbert Hoover, last Republican president who cast his ballot in New York. President and Mrs. Truman returned to their home in Independence, Missouri, to vote after a whirlwind campaign on behalf of Democratic candidate Adlai Stevenson. In the village of Half Day, Illinois, near his hometown of Bloomington, Governor Stevenson records his vote after one of the most strenuous campaigns in history. Starting as a political unknown, he became a nationally known figure. In New York, General Eisenhower signs the register early on the morning of Election Day. After an illustrious military career and a fighting political campaign, he stands before the American electorate awaiting their answer. While on the opposite side of the country, his running mate, Richard Nixon, and his wife take their turn at the polls in California. The Deep South is heard from, where Alabama's John Sparkman, Democratic vice presidential candidate, goes to the polls at his native city of Huntsville. Another Democratic stalwart and architect of 2 Roosevelt victories is James Farley, as well as Senator Lehman, both casting their vote in New York. Again across continent, Governor Warren of California, who campaigned vigorously for the general, casts his vote. After an 18-hour talkathon on television, Governor Dewey of New York, a staunch supporter of General Eisenhower, registers his ballot. Beamed to the armed services overseas, minute-by-minute returns of the elections are broadcast as the absentee ballots of the GIs flood in. A 24-hour service is maintained for the armed forces. The returns come in slowly at first, but then rising into a flood of votes, soon pointing toward a Republican victory. The big tally board at Eisenhower headquarters in New York brings a swelling chorus of cheers from party workers. It would be close, the polls indicated, but now state after state falls into the GOP column, and a landslide victory appears certain. Democratic headquarters in Washington, scene of gloom and defeat, as the sweep to Ike becomes more and more apparent. Men who had worked hard for Governor Stevenson now wait, their spirits numbed, for the soon expected concession of defeat from Springfield, Illinois. It comes soon. Illinois falls to Ike, a sign of the end. It's Eisenhower by a landslide, the greatest plurality of any Republican standard bearer, with 30 million votes, well over 400 electoral votes. At Republican headquarters, a tremendous ovation greets the president-elect and the next First Lady. A beaming Ike and a radiant Mamie. The long campaign is over. The American people have spoken with a resounding voice at the polls. Victory is here. After 20 years, the Republican Party is back in power. General Dwight D. Eisenhower is elected. His party has won control of Congress, with the Senate pretty evenly divided. Entering upon the crowning achievement of an already famous career, General Eisenhower humbly accepts the cheers of those who work for him. And as humbly, our new president asks for support from all Americans in the tasks that lie ahead.
My friends, it is trite to say that this is a day of dedication rather than of triumph. But I am indeed as humble as I am proud of the decision that the American people have made. And I recognize clearly the weight of the responsibilities you have placed upon me, and I assure you that I shall never, in my service in Washington, give short weight to those responsibilities. To each of you here who has worked so hard to make this crusade a success thus far, to every man, woman, and child, and there have been many children in it, throughout the country, who has helped. I extend my warm thanks and hope that the day will come when I can extend that thanks in a more personal way. Now, all over the country, there is still a more personal word of appreciation. The courtesy, the warmth of the greeting that Mamie and I have experienced everywhere has been something that is memorable, indeed unforgettable. So, to everybody this evening, we feel this very great debt of gratitude. And I also point out that we cannot now do all the job ahead of us except as a united people. And so let us really put into practice what I have tried to say so haltingly in the little telegram that I sent to my late rival. Let us unite for the better future for America, for our children and our grandchildren. And now, my friends, it's been a long and sometimes hard road, but it's been great to meet you people, to work with you, all of us, for a common cause. Good night.
All Americans hail their president-elect, their next commander-in-chief, Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Okay, Trigger, let's ask her real nice.
(1952) was for America a year of decision. A record 62 million, representing a cross-section of this broad land, streamed to the polls to choose their next president. Uppermost in their minds was Korea. On this point, candidate Eisenhower made a dramatic campaign statement.
This evening, I repeat to you the pledge I made to all the American people last week. This will be the first great labor of our new administration. To advance it, to appraise on the spot methods for solving that particular problem with speed and honor, I shall go to Korea.
When the ballots had been counted and the nation had spoken, General Ike rolled up a majority of 6 million votes over his Democratic opponent. After 20 years, the administration had changed hands, and the public met its new president and the incoming First Lady of the land. It was bitterly cold when the president-elect arrived in Korea to keep his campaign promise, and it was the beginning of a 3-day whirlwind tour of a front now going into its 3rd year. It was part of the general's mission to see and appraise for himself a problem on which his administration must decide. 1952 also made history on a turbulent labor front. A $7 billion steel industry was paralyzed by a strike that was to create a legal landmark. The president seized the industry by executive edict, and a court battle ensued, with government attorneys upholding the president's right of seizure and the steel companies making a last-ditch fight. In an historic decision, Judge David Pine ruled against the president and was later upheld by the United States Supreme Court. It was a year of tragedy and mourning for Great Britain, which lost its well-loved monarch, George VI, who, despite his grave illness, continued his duties until death overtook him at the age of 56. Throughout the British Commonwealth, the Sailor King had won the hearts of his subjects, and his passing cast a pall over the empire. The late king's daughter became England's second Queen Elizabeth. Carefully reared to her responsibilities, she has already captured the affections of Britons during her short reign. But in 1952, the fortunes of the empire suffered severe setbacks. In Egypt, a series of riots touched off by nationalists protested the occupation by the British of the Suez Canal area and the Sudan. Many died during the violence. Unrest in Egypt reached its peak with a military coup in which King Farouk was ousted and went into exile with his wife and infant son. Thus ended a reign in the Middle East, now one of the trouble spots of the world. In Iran, Britain suffered another reverse with the nationalization of its huge oil industry and confiscation of the properties amid scenes of violence. Hearings before the International Court at The Hague failed to solve the difference, as Premier Mossadegh, with his parliament behind him, firmly pursued his nationalist course. Air crashes also marked the year, with Elizabeth, New Jersey bearing the brunt in property damage, and on the West Coast, aviation's greatest disaster, in which 86 GIs perished. While in England, the most spectacular crash of the year occurred during an air show. A jet broke the sonic barrier and exploded in midair, bombarding a crowd of 100,000. Its hurtling engines carved a path of death. 29 perished and scores were injured. Poignant scenes followed as dead and wounded were removed. Again, disaster struck England when the Scottish Express plowed into a commuter train on the outskirts of London. A second express struck the tangled mass of wreckage, and when the toll was counted, the dead numbered 200. 1952, however, witnessed a new chapter written into the stark annals of the sea. The American freighter Flying Enterprise foundered after a series of storms off the English coast. It lasted 8 days, an epic struggle between a ship, its skipper, and the implacable sea before a heartbreaking defeat. But the world acclaimed Captain Kurt Carlson, the man who refused to leave his ship, and the man who wrote his name indelibly in the sagas of the sea. The Korean prisoner of war issue loomed large during the year, both in United Nations councils and in the compounds on Koji Island, where 20,000 Red fanatics conducted a systematic campaign of mass rebellion. After an attempt at mass break, United Nations guards were forced into drastic action to quell the rebellion. A later outbreak on Pangam Island caused the death of 87 Red rioters and injury to UN guards. Nor was prisoner violence confined to Korea. United States prisons broke out in a rash of convict violence. In Michigan and New Jersey, uprisings resulted in millions of dollars in damage to prison buildings, the holding of guards as hostages, and the spectacle of convicted felons bargaining with their wardens, and in some cases, state governors. Atomic energy took giant strides forward. Britain exploded its first atomic bomb, and the United States set off the most awesome weapon of all, the hydrogen bomb. The atomic age had truly come into being, and man had firmly in his grasp the forces of progress and his own destruction. The searing atomic blasts punctuated an event-packed year, a year of which historians of the future may well say, it was a year of destiny.
The Silver Jubilee celebration of Modern Screen Magazine is keynoted by Kirk Douglas, beard and all, who presents the annual award to Rock Hudson, selected as the most popular film actor of the year. It's a happy birthday celebration, especially for the handsome young actor, for this is the second year in a row that Mr. Hudson has been picked by Modern Screen as most popular actor. Top honors for a top star.
Grand Central Station crowds welcome another Hollywood star to the East Coast. That scintillating 5-year-old of screen fame, Bonzo, is greeted by curvaceous Gene Williams, president of the Bonzo Fan Club. The new film celebrity will spend a week in New York being wined and dined as befits his popularity before starting on a nationwide tour to make personal appearances on behalf of his Universal International film feature, Bedtime for Bonzo. He registers his simian signature and demands a twin bedroom at 4 coconuts per day. He'll probably wind up with a couple of trees and connecting grapevine. Before hitting the sack, he has to call his Hollywood agent, arrange his itinerary, send flowers to his girlfriend, and leave a call for 7:30 jungle time. After all, there's no business like monkey business.
Record storms ushered in the year along the English coast, and 700 miles out on the Atlantic, flying Enterprise lies stricken in the heavy seas, her hull cracked by huge waves. Passengers and crew have gone. Only her captain remains on board. Kurt Carlson is his name, and his gallant attempt to save his ship stirred the hearts of millions. A line is shot to the foundering vessel. The daring mate of a rescue tug joins Captain Carlson to help save the flying Enterprise. But the tow cable snaps. A second storm dooms the ship. Carlson and his companion leap to safety just before the flying Enterprise starts its final plunge to the bottom of the ocean. A dramatic saga of heroism ends in failure, but the world is proud of Captain Kurt Carlson. New York takes to its heart an adopted son who wrote a story of heroism at sea. His wife and two daughters look on proudly as Captain Stay-Put Carlson returns home to receive a hero's welcome. Cheers and ticker tape mingle on Broadway for the courageous skipper who fought a raging Atlantic in his vain attempt to save his sinking ship. New York says, "Well done, Captain Carlson. Your bravery and courage in the face of danger made the world a brighter place in this year of 1952. This is Koji Island, scene of bloody prison riots that rocked the world. Thousands of North Korean and Chinese prisoners, led by a hardcore of unruly Reds, plot defiance against their captors. Secretly at first, then switching to open defiance, embarking on a reign of terror against fellow captives who have switched allegiance to freedom's cause. Jeering at their UN guards, they drill openly with dummy guns, openly flaunting the rules of war. Held hostage, General Dodd is freed only after bowing to impossible Red demands. He is removed from command of the prison island and is replaced by General Boatner. A new and sterner regime is promised by the new commander, who tells his men the Reds respect only one thing: force. General Boatner's Get Tough policy is quickly put into effect. Additional troops are flown in and, backed by tanks, storm the compounds to oust the defiant prisoners. The work of subduing the Reds is on in earnest. For hours, the battle rages, the toll of dead rises as the really tough prisoners fight on to the bitter end. But the new Get Tough policy pays off on Koji. The ringleaders are isolated, and the rest are soon imprisoned in smaller compounds. The smoke of battle dies down. Koji Island is again under control. The menace of communism to the free world came into sharp focus in Tokyo on May Day 1952. Incited by communist agents, hundreds of thousands of Red partisans are turned into an angry mob. Termed a dress rehearsal for revolution, the rioting spreads. Tokyo police move in to cope with the demonstrators, but before May Day is over, 3 persons are dead and hundreds injured. Only 3 days before, Japan won back her independence. Today, she sees how that freedom could be lost again. A king is dead. With shocking suddenness, the news of King George's death stuns the world. Hurrying home from her vacation in Africa is a young woman who left a princess, comes home a queen, to face the first sorrowful duty of her reign, the state funeral of her father. With all the somber grandeur that Britain bestows on its dead monarchs, George VI leaves London for the last time on the journey to his final resting place at Windsor, 20 miles away. Millions mourn a man who strove humbly and valiantly for peace in a war-torn world, a man of kingly qualities who endeared himself to his subjects. 4 mourning women of the royal family follow the coffin containing the mortal remains of a son, a husband, a father, and a king. Here in St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle, George VI rests alongside his father. Here, he joins monarchs who go back to Henry VIII. A king is dead. Long live the Queen. A new Elizabeth ascends the throne of England, and an empire says, God save the Queen. John Cobb, holder of the world's auto speed mark, prepares for an assault on the speedboat record at Loch Ness, Scotland, in his jet-propelled Crusader, an attempt fated to end in tragedy. Cobb races through the measured mile at over 200 miles per hour. But then as the horrified crowd, his wife among them, look on, disaster. The Crusader struck a wave and literally disintegrated. Rescuers reached the scene within minutes, but too late. John Cobb has raced his last race. 1952 was a year of big things in aviation. Big planes like Uncle Sam's new aerial ace, the giant 8-engine B-52 bomber. It flies higher and faster and farther than any other bomber in the world. For defense of American skies from air attack, the Starfire jet interceptor, directed to its target and its weapons fired by radar, packing a Sunday punch with 12 rockets in its sleek nose. The British took the wraps off the world's first Delta Wing bomber, a flying triangle of the atom age. Britain also kept pace in the jet fighter race with a twin-tailed interceptor that exceeded the speed of sound. An unsuspecting monkey soared into space in a rocket to become the first real-life space cadet. Two white mice also went along on the history-making ride, pointing the way to man's conquest of space. The year saw many startling developments in rockets and guided missiles, but none more startling than the space travels of one monkey and two mice. 38 miles up. There's no gravity this far out, no ups or downs. An automatic camera shows the mice suspended in their cage, rolling free in a strange new world of space. A parachute eases the rocket and its riders back to Earth. As Monkey says, the trip was out of this world. Political battle lines are drawn in Chicago. Governor Adlai Stevenson, choice of the Democrats, enters the campaign against the GOP nominee, General Dwight Eisenhower. The campaign was hard-fought, and the experts predicted a close race. On Election Day, Governor Stevenson goes to the polls in Illinois, confident of continuing the 20-year rule of his party. In New York, General Eisenhower is just as confident as he registers to cast his vote. Across the nation, the returns pour in. The people speak, and their verdict? A landslide victory for Dwight D. Eisenhower, elected president with the greatest popular vote ever given a White House candidate. Replying to this resounding mandate from the American people, our next president makes this solemn pledge.
I assure you that I shall never, in my service in Washington, give short weight to those responsibilities.
Spotlight on big screen entertainment at New York's Times Square. The gala premiere of Thunder Bay ushers in a widescreen 3 times regular size. A new era of motion picture exhibition. Directional sound heightens the entertainment value of the film. A saga of offshore oil drilling. Universal International executives are among the 3,000 persons attending. Leaders of the motion picture industry, civic officials, stars of stage and screen, thronging into Lowe's State for the world premiere of this history-making picture. The new widescreen, with its tremendous scope for panoramic thrills, lends itself especially to adventure films such as this. The big town goes all out in its welcome. The boys in blue were hard at work when my husband and I arrived. We wouldn't have missed it for the world. Margaret Truman was among the celebrities on hand. The Boris Karloffs and no Frankenstein. Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh, the popular Mr. and Mrs. team from Hollywood, greeted by their fans. And a greeting in return by the handsome couple. Xavier Cugat and Abby Lane. The star of the picture, Jimmy Stewart, here for the premiere with the charming Mrs. Stewart, his #1 fan. Jimmy Stewart, plus the wonder of full stage screen, plus the miracle of stereophonic sound, plus Thunder Bay, all adding up to entertainment plus.